One question, what would you say? You talk about leadership, or transformation doers. What would you say, let's use the term of leader. What would you say are the most important aspects, competencies? What is important for leader today?
Well, that question, funny enough, yesterday I had a conversation with a pastor of a very interesting congregation close to Frankfurt. And he's doing kind of a leadership course for his people who are volunteers in his parish. And he asked me the same question. And after some thinking, I said, well, the one thing is you have to know yourself as a leader. If you want to lead others, you first have to lead yourself. And mindset and attitude is core of this, that you whatever you do, whatever you don't do, you do that from a certain standpoint, from a certain mindset and a certain attitude behind that. And that should always shine through, and it should always show the others your basic intention, why you do certain things, that this becomes obvious and this is also consistent. And the other thing is, in leadership, I think you're opening a space for others to come up with their potential, and to hold this space you have to do a lot of communication, and to have authentic communication in positive situations, but also if you have to criticize somebody, that you do that in a appreciative but also authentic way, and that you speak clear to people and not just try to escape, because it's not very comfortable to tell somebody something went wrong or somebody has to change. And if that is necessary, as a leader you have to tell people, because otherwise you harm your entire team, you don't give the chance to people to improve themselves, and you're also harming yourself because you're responsible for the team you're working with. And if there are certain weaknesses in that team and you don't help to improve that, then you're not a good leader, in my opinion. So these are two core aspects: to have a clear mindset and a clear understanding of yourself, and an open, clear and authentic but also appreciative communication. These are the core aspects.
How would you say is this accepted in the business world? Is it a concept where business says we are ready for it?
I guess.
Is it too much out of the box?
No, I think it is common sense, basically. This is nothing, no rocket science or so. And in principle, this is widely accepted, but the question is, how do you live it? Mm-hmm. And how do you really implement that? In particular, if there is a situation where there's a lot at stake, mm-hmm. Then in many cases you fall back as a leader into your normal behavior, into your learned behavior. You might have become successful with this, but in certain other situations you have to improve and mm-hmm. to develop yourself as a leader. And in these situations, in many cases, people who are not trained in that or have not a lot of experience, they fall back into old behavior or not a real leadership behavior. And that is the situation where sometimes consultants are called in as coaches or as trainers for some situations, particularly for younger people. For experienced and older leaders, usually you act as a coach and help them to find their own style, their own approach to leadership, and sometimes you help them to find themselves, mm-hmm. which is from time to time a very hard work, but also a very satisfying work. If you have somebody you can really work with, mm-hmm. and who is open to learn, mm-hmm. basically, or who is ready to open up. Mm-hmm. If that happens and you can work with these people, that is can be very fulfilling.
What would you say distinguishes leadership from management? What is this difference between a leader and a manager?
There's a lot of discussion in literature. You can read many articles about that, even books. To just make it short, a manager, the task of a manager is to get certain things done and to make it right in an efficient way, and just to get work done. The leaders more ask the question, what should we do? What kind of decisions should we make? And what should be our portfolio? In which direction should we go? So to do the right things, that is their question. To do the things right is more the manager. But my thinking goes even beyond these two, this more or less dialectic approach. And I think we need somebody else in that arena. And that would be a person that is more like a supporter for the two, for the leader and for the manager, and even ask the question not only to do the things right and to do the right things, ask the question, what is the essence of all our activity and what helps us to exist even further and to survive, and what are the aspects that we also have to look at, and not only which are more or less at hand, but provides the larger perspective. And sometimes you could call this person, this role, a transformer. If you go into the medical arena, you could also call them a healer, a therapist. Basically, the translation of therapist is a healer. Somebody who helps to create the whole again. Not only the separate parts or the fragmented parts, but to have the view on the whole, and how a certain business, for instance, can also contribute to the common wealth.
It's really interesting. Who would that be in an organization? Would it be the CEO? Would it be a consultant? Inside, outside, what would you...
It can be a consultant. It can be somebody from the advisory board. It can be some person in some department who has this point of view, and who has close access to also the people higher up in the hierarchy. Usually I don't think it will be the CEO, because usually that role is a leadership role. And usually this person also is forced to play a certain role in public, in the news, into the organization, to the people, to the management, and so. And usually these people are not as free as they should be in order to play that other role. Many hundred years ago, we had the court, and we had the king, and there was the court jester, who played kind of this role to also show the mirror to the king and say there's something going wrong, or you can do this and this, and you have to look for this and for that. This kind of role, which is a little bit the bystander role in this model, that is the additional role I'm thinking of, and I'm also thinking of writing some paper about this, because that is, in my eyes, that is missing a little bit. Sometimes consultants can play that role. In some other cases, they're not very interested in this, because you have to carry a lot of responsibility for that particular organization and for the whole. And some people are ready for this, and some don't care about that.
I could imagine that there are already some people within an organization who have this role. How could they be supported? How could they be strengthened? Or given some, should they get more power? Should they be supported? What is necessary to find those people within an organization?
First, they have to be seen, and people have to be recognized that they play this role, and that needs to be appreciated. In many cases, they are not the loudest people. In many cases, they are not the guys who are making speeches and who have the most obvious ideas and who do the latest inventions or so in a company. They speak from time to the right people, and they have a sense of reading the organization in a way which others cannot do. And sometimes they feel misunderstood. Sometimes there are some outlaws in the organization. They don't play, obviously, an important role from the hierarchy or from the ranks. But on the other hand, they play a very important role if they can play it, if they are allowed to play that role. So it is the question of managers and leaders to look for these people, first of all, and then to appreciate them, and not to overwhelm them, and to maybe bring them in a completely different position where they cannot play their role anymore because they have other things to do. Just to see them, to give them room for their own work, and to draw the right conclusions. I think that is what managers and leaders could do.
Understanding you right, do you say leadership and management is linked to positions? Would you say some positions are leadership positions and others are management positions, or would you say it's a practice that can be adapted by different positions and roles?
Usually, if you have an image of an organization which is following a certain hierarchy, you would think the higher up in the hierarchy you are, the more the roles and the positions are turning to leadership roles and positions than in the middle and in the lower part of the hierarchy. But you can also have leaders which are not in the regular organization chart at the top. You can have them somewhere in the middle or even at the bottom part, which are actual leaders, but they don't have a power position. Sometimes even the leaders are the partners of some people in the organization, and they tell them something, or they have conversations during the weekends or during vacation with their partners, sometimes the man or the woman, and they have conversations, and by this they have a different perspective on what is going on, and they ask some questions, and they could play the leadership role in a certain way. From people said many American presidents, the real leaders had been their wives. Ronald Reagan, George Bush the father, even George Bush the son. His mother played a very crucial leadership role in the election phase, but also during his terms. So sometimes Nancy Reagan, the wife of Ronald Reagan, played this role, and she was very influential. And of course, these leaders, they need a counterpart they can fully trust. Sometimes they don't find them in their party or in their administration, so they have their spouses, and they can play that role of a leader.
I'm looking at your profile. You said you also do coachings. If you coach a former leader who is not a leader in practice, how do you put this in value? The situation that maybe a friend of him, a wife, or whoever is real leadership. That's just a question that comes to my mind.
At the end, you can just work with them according to the topics they want to work through, and you can encourage them that sometimes it's not necessary to have that visible leadership position. Sometimes it can be the exact good role and the fit to the role, that you stay where you are and do your work from there, and then just have a clear view on the stakeholders you have to work with, and you're influencing, or you're trying to work with in one way or the other. Encouragement, I think, is the most you can do there, and also help them if they feel insecure, or they're lacking certain tools or so, to go through this with them. But at the end, they have to be themselves and to be a natural person. Just sink in yourself, and to strengthen them in this. I think that could be the task of a coach in that situation.